This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I'm your host, Noah Taluki, and on today's episode, the big news coming from last week, Matthew Stafford is leaving the Detroit Lions. That trade will not become official until March, though, but I'll give you my reaction to that. And then Dan Campbell being hired. I haven't talked since last episode. We're going to give my reaction to that as well. And also some things with the Lions now changing with the draft, especially with Stafford being gone. So I'll give you a little insight into maybe who the Lions should be looking at as of now. But hopefully everybody had a good weekend out there. I had a really, really busy week last week. You know, there's everything here at John Carroll University where I go, just outside of Cleveland. A lot of things are ramping up right now. So a lot of athletics are back. The basketball team is back, both men's and women's. So I've been working those games. I've been doing public address announcing, doing radio announcing, working in the sports information office. I'm going to football has just started up as well. So I've been filming those practices like I've been doing the last few years. So it's just been a really, really busy week and a little bit difficult for me to keep track of some of the Lions stuff right now, but I'm definitely doing my best. I'm trying as much as I can during breaks to, look at different news and do my research. So definitely trying to keep up there. But the Super Bowl, want to get to the Super Bowl stuff before we get to Stafford and all that. It's going to be a great matchup. I mean, look at that. Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. You got arguably the old guard versus the new guard of the NFL. And the Bucs, I mean, Brady proving that he can win in both conferences. I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, 43 years old. And look, okay, 4,600 yards, 30-something touchdown, 40 or something like that, somewhere in there he had this season. That's just remarkable. I mean, for a guy who's 43 years old, and I know there's times that he looked off and all that, but of course, 43 years old, but somehow he's made it back to the Super Bowl, and it's really unbelievable. Bruce Arians, get a shout-out to him as well. Scotty Miller, receiver from Bowling Green, he actually played football with an assistant coach here at John Carroll at Bowling Green, and they still talk. So I get my Scotty Miller update every week. So I'm really pulling for these guys. I'm really hoping the Bucs win personally. And we'll talk more about the Super Bowl next week. But it'd be great to just see the Bucs because since the Packers lost, in my picks, like I mentioned before, I'm still in first place, but I don't know how long I'll be in first place, especially if the Chiefs win. If the Chiefs win, I'm not going to be in first place anymore. But if the Bucs win, I may have a chance at winning some big money. So we'll have to see about that. But it definitely should be an exciting Super Bowl. And in Tampa, I've been waiting for a long, long time to see a team play in their home stadium. And now finally the Bucs do it in the Super Bowl. So that's really exciting for the city of Tampa too. A lot of interesting. I mean, just think about it. Like the hockey team's doing really well. The Rays just made the World Series last year. And now Tampa's in the Super Bowl. This is the golden age to be a Tampa sports fan. I mean, just absolutely incredible. Just wanted to get that out there. All right, so the big news of the weekend, Matthew Stafford demanding a trade. That won't become official until March, though, but he at least put it on the table. Offers can be entertained and all that, but the paperwork and all that just will not be official till March. And I've been telling this to you folks, and I've been saying this since earlier in the year when Dan Orlovsky had those comments on ESPN about Stafford he may leave at the end of the year. And sure enough, it was true. Now, there were also reports out there that were saying that whoever was interviewing for the general manager and the head coaching spot, that they knew ahead of time that Stafford wanted out, that he was going to be gone. So they took this job knowing that Stafford was not the future for the Lions, that he was going to be moving on and, they're going to have to get another quarterback somewhere. I'll just say this. It hurt. It really hurt because Stafford is the reason I watched the Lions. And I'll get into all that stuff later. Once it becomes official or, we know what team he's going to, I'll do a little ode to Matthew Stafford because this is the guy, this has always been my favorite Lion. He's the guy, he's the reason I watch Lions football. He was just so exciting in the Honolulu blue and silver. And it's going to be really, really sad. I was sad. Not going to lie. It's one of those things where you remember exactly where you were when you got the news. And it was the same way with Justin Verlander when he got traded from the Tigers to the Astros. I remember exactly where I was right when I heard the news. This is the same thing with Matthew Stafford. I was actually doing public address announcing for our women's basketball team here at John Carroll when my friend from across the gym was yelling at me and saying, Noah, check your phone. And I'm like, well, what does he need? I'm in the middle of calling the game. So when there was a timeout called, I checked my phone, and he had texted me that Matthew Stafford was going to be out of here, that he had requested a trade. And, I didn't really have time to look at the news. I looked at that more after the game, but I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. We always thought Matthew Stafford, there was a little bit deep inside of us, some people that maybe thought he would stay. And I know there were reports of Dan Orlovsky and all that, and I told everybody to consider that, of course. But it just seems so unfathomable. You think he's just been here for so long, and he's been so loyal. He's been that company man, like, I want to stay. I love Detroit. And the fans love it. I love it. But it just never thought this day would come, but here we are. This day has come, and I'm sad. Not going to lie, I'm sad. Because this is officially the end of an era. You think of the Matthew Stafford and just throwing those deep shots, fourth quarter comebacks, Calvin Johnson stuff. I mean, you just think of all of that and just what a tremendous, tremendous career he has. But he's off to greener pastures. Now, the question of which team he's going to go to is a long discussion. Personally, I think the Indianapolis Colts make the best sense. And I've been telling people, logistically, if he still wants to keep his house here in Detroit, or if Kelly, wants to visit her friends up here or whatever, he at least is close by, I guess, logistically. I don't know if that's going to play into it or anything, but just a thought. But even, outside, even if you minus the off the field stuff, on the field, I mean, the Colts have a great team. Phillip Rivers just retired, and I just see Matthew Stafford. He's pretty much the same colors. The blue and white, basically, just a little darker shade, I guess. But I think it could be a good fit, and he has to go to a team that's just ready to win, and I think that's where he's going to go. I mean, there's other teams out there. There's San Francisco in the talk. I mean, Houston was in the talk because of Deshaun Watson wanting out. Then there was the whole talk of Denver, even like a sneaky candidate. I don't want to get into a ton of that. I just think personally that the Colts could be the best decision right now for him. But that's up for him to decide, and we're not going to hear about that basically until March when it's finalized. So we'll have to wait back. We'll have to wait back and see. But the Lions are definitely acknowledging a rebuild, and I don't know. There's something about this that if the Lions were to draft a quarterback at number 7, and we'll get into more quarterback talk later on in the podcast, but if they were to draft a quarterback at 7, which it seems like they're going to now, it has to be a home run hire. It has to be a home run pick. This can't be a guy that, is it's a developmental project that could take a few years. No, in my opinion, it has to be a guy that's going to be your cornerstone for 15 years. Not a guy that has a bunch of question marks. This has to be a can't-miss guy. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know how many guys in the draft there are right now that are can't-miss guys. I mean, I definitely say Trevor Lawrence is a can't-miss guy. I don't know about Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. I don't know if those guys are can't-miss. They have to be guys that are can't-miss and the absolute cornerstone of the franchise, because this decision in the draft, if they take a quarterback, will determine the success of this franchise for the next 10 years. I really believe that. We'll get more into that talk later, but right now I really want to talk about Dan Campbell. Now, Dan Campbell, oh man, what a press conference that was. Look, was he my number one choice? Deep down it was Brandon Staley, the defensive coordinator for the Rams that just got the head coaching job on the other side of town with the LA Chargers. That was my number one, but I always kind of, I didn't want to get into that whole head coaching talk, but deep down, that's who really I wanted. But Dan Campbell, I love this guy. I mean, just everything about him just really intrigues me. And I was texting, some of the former Lions players like Corey Schlesinger that we've had on the podcast, and because he played with Dan. Dan was a former Lion, 2006, 2008. He did play for the Lions, and he likes him. I mean, he said he had a lot of good laughs with him back in the day as well, which is nice because he seems like a good guy, just like a funny guy, but like a no nonsense. It just something about him just seems just really interesting. But the thing is like this is who the Lions need. They need a guy that's no nonsense. They need a guy that's going to tell people the right things, and not just because it's the right thing to say, but because it's true. Got to have people that tell him the truth. And I think, at least from the press conference, it seemed like this is the guy that is going to tell him. I mean, I could get into a conversation all day about the biting the kneecaps thing off, but he was just trying to make a point. I mean, he's trying to really gel with the fans. The fans are going to love him, by the way. The fans will adore this guy because he is just all about Detroit, bleeding that Honolulu blue and silver, and really trying to establish a culture. And I'll just say this. Chris Spielman, I think, had a big part in this because this is something that Chris Spielman would 100% be on board with. And I'm really happy about this. I'm happy about the hire. I'll tell you what, his assistants that he's hiring, Anthony Lynn. Now, there's all okay, well, Anthony Lynn wasn't a good head coach. I'm fine with him as offensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn, a former player, as defensive coordinator, I got nothing wrong with that. Deuce Staley, the highly respected running backs coach from the Eagles, he's a great hire. I mean, they are really, really making strides with their hires. And then, how could I forget John Dorsey? John Dorsey, remember I had mentioned in a podcast a couple months ago, there was talk of him becoming the general manager for the Lions. But the fact that he's on board as a senior personnel executive only helps the cause for the Lions. I mean, this is really, really good work by Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and the whole staff, because this makes me feel very confident, very secure about what the Lions' future is. Now, I know there's not much worse than the previous regime. Anything that we hire will be better than the previous regime, but for some reason, deep down, I just feel like they're making enough moves where something could work. And I'm not saying it's going to happen right away next year, maybe even the year after. I just think over time, this thing could really materialize, and there could be a winning football team, maybe within the next 3 or 4 years. We'll see. But I think the next big decision for Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and company is what to do, well, besides the quarterback, what to do with the quarterback position now that Stafford will be gone. I just want to know what's going to happen with Kenny Golladay. Where is Marvin Jones going to be staying? I think now we start to see, okay, who are the receivers? Are they going to franchise Kenny Golladay? Are they going to franchise tag Romeo Okwara? Who knows? We don't know yet. We're going to have to see, because I think it's very, very important that this new quarterback, whoever he is, comes in and at least has a decent wide receiver, a true X receiver. That's why I really think Kenny Golladay needs to stay, especially now. And we can get into the whole talk about him being hurt and all that, but I think he gives you at least a viable option for the future. And also, I mean, if you're really that concerned about Kenny Golladay, go get a receiver. I mean, there's plenty of guys that pan out in the NFL that are drafted in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. I mean, we can go get guys in later picks that could pan out. I mean, there's all kinds of different options. I just think that there needs to be a true number 1 receiver here in Detroit. So hopefully something can happen if Kenny stays. It would be amazing if Marvin could stay. But I respect if he wants to go out and entertain other offers at other places, because I think he had said that he was really excited for free agency. And I think he had said something about him wanting to be closer to California, where he's from. So we'll have to see about that. I don't even know if Danny Amendola is going to be back. I think the future could be with Quintez Cephas anyways at slot receiver. But still, and then obviously there's TJ Hawkinson, that's at least a good target. And especially in the modern NFL, you got to have a really good tight end, and TJ, I think, can be that very good tight end. I mean, he made the Pro Bowl this year. They just need to utilize him more. And I kept saying this during the season. They just needed to utilize him. If we can get a smart offensive coordinator like Anthony Lynn, I think this offense could explode. This offense could be very, very potent, even more potent. I know at certain times it was, but especially the running game, as we all know, the running game was very bad. If they can use DeAndre Swift in the right ways and get TJ Hawkinson the ball, I mean, I think this offense could be very. The offense is not the problem. Remember, it's the defense. They're gonna have to really retool the defense, but I think with a couple draft picks and getting a new scheme in there, because that scheme was bad. I think that scheme would have at least won the Lions a little bit more games, maybe 1 or 2 more games, but just the talent wasn't there. And I think Brad Holmes, as Luther Bradley had mentioned on last week's podcast, you want to go check it out, his number 1 gift is an eye for talent. And that's something the Lions have not had in a long time. And if they can have that eye for talent on the defensive side of the ball, this team should be a very up-and-coming team in the next few years, but it's definitely going to look a lot different. I think there's going to be a lot of roster turnover this offseason, and Dan Campbell just getting his guys in. But so far, he's been assembling a very, very good coaching staff. I mean, how can I forget about Giff Smith? Giff Smith. He's supposedly the D-line coach now. He's coming in from the Chargers. Chargers had some good pass rushers. I mean, they had Bosa for the last 5 seasons. He's been the D-line coach. So we'll have to see. And I know they're retaining Hank Fraley because Hank Fraley was supposed to be the best coach on that coaching staff last year. Very good offensive line coach. I mean, look at Frank Ragnow, what he did with Taylor Decker. The O-line held up this year. I mean, the right side of the line was a little bit of a mess, but for the most part, I thought the O-line did a decent job protecting Matthew Stafford. So we'll have to see. I mean, I'm excited. You know, this should be a good time. And I know Detroit sports, as we all know, this is an old bit, but everybody's rebuilding right now. Everybody, the Red Wings, the Pistons, the Tigers. There's just not a lot of hope. The Lions gave us some hope this week, and regardless of what anybody says, this is a football town, and people will always care about the Lions. So it's an exciting future in my eyes. I think this decade, the 2020s, for all Detroit sports really, is going to be something special because we've waited for so long for something. And it can all go up. Everything goes up from here. We've hit rock bottom in all 4 sports. It has to get better. It has to. And I think this decade is the time. So just be patient, everybody, in my opinion. I think it'll all work out in the end. But so speaking of that future, Lions are going to have a big decision to make pretty soon because Stafford's gone. So who's going to be the quarterback? So let's look at the options on the team right now. No, nobody on this team. I don't want David Blau starting. I don't want Chase Daniel starting. Nuh-uh. None of that's happening. They're either getting a quarterback this year or getting, and I mentioned this to some people. Don't laugh at me for saying this. Get maybe a guy, like a patchwork guy, a quarterback that maybe will be here for a year or two, and then maybe in a couple years from now go draft a quarterback. There are a few free agent quarterbacks out there. I know Cam Newton is a name, Tyrod Taylor, Jameis Winston. I mean, even Mitchell Trubisky from the Bears. Playoffs the last two of the last 3 years. At this point, personally, I wouldn't mind having a patchwork quarterback the first couple years of the rebuild because there's just a lot of question marks about some of these guys in the draft. And I thought maybe in a couple years from now, maybe the pickings will be ripe, if you will, at quarterback. And I know this is a quarterback deep class, but there's just a lot of guys that have question marks in my eyes. And this is just talking as of now. You know, this could change later on as we get closer to the draft. But a couple guys in terms of the draft that I've been thinking about, that I've really been trying to study, and I will be in the next coming weeks as well. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields. I think, and you could even add Mac Jones to that list. Because I've heard things about Mac Jones, about you think he's more pro-ready than the other guys. And he's a big quarterback, got a decent arm, and obviously has won the national championship with a cast of great receivers. But some people question, well, was it the receivers that made him great, or was it really him that himself that made him great? So I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that more. But also, Zach Wilson is one guy that really intrigues me because I've heard conflicting things. Some people think, oh, well, he won't pan out. Other people say, well, he has a really good arm, kind of like Josh, a little bit similar to Josh Allen's situation, where Josh Allen went to Wyoming, small school with not a lot of competition. So the competition obviously is a question mark. Zach Wilson last season threw 33 touchdown passes and only 3 interceptions. They only had 1 loss as a team, and that 1 loss was to ranked Coastal Carolina. But I was watching some film on Zach Wilson, and the number one trait that you can see in him is that he is a play extender. He has a lot of natural throwing ability, like Matthew Stafford. He could throw it at different arm angles as well, like Matthew Stafford. There are a little bit of similarities in Zach Wilson's game to Matthew Stafford. I would probably say, at least according to the film I've seen, that Zach Wilson's a little more mobile maybe than Matthew Stafford is, but Zach Wilson can throw on the run. He can throw to the boundary. He can throw left and right. And the other thing, the main thing he can really do is extend plays. And in the modern NFL, that's what you need. You need to be a play extender, because I've never seen defenses look more silly than I have in the previous couple years, because everything is so on the fly based, it seems like these days. If the play doesn't work, you're basically pointing downfield to the receiver and saying, go there. It's basically like backyard football. That's why offenses have exploded a lot, and partly because of all this. And Zach Wilson fits that mold of extending plays. Now, can he do that at the NFL level? We'll have to see. That's why there's a lot of question marks on him. I think the one quarterback that doesn't really have a ton of question marks is Trevor Lawrence, but we all know there's no way that the Lions are going to get him. But there's no way that we even know if the Lions are going to get Zach Wilson either, because Zach Wilson could go to the Jets at 2 if they're not a believer in Sam Darnold, which to some reports, Robert Saleh and their offensive coordinators seem like they want to stick with Darnold. So they may draft Penei Sewell, the guy from the offensive tackle from Oregon. Then the Falcons, there's talk that the Falcons may draft a quarterback. We don't know if that's going to be Fields, Lance, Wilson, any of those guys. And then Miami is at number 3. We know Miami probably won't take a quarterback unless they really don't believe in Tua, but they definitely believe in Tua in my eyes. So they're probably going to draft a receiver, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, somebody like that. Speaking of that, I've told you guys I'm not opposed to the Lions taking a receiver at number 7. Now, that's only if Kenny Golladay or Marvin Jones leaves. Only. And this is a deep receiver class as well. So if they could maybe get a piece there to solidify and have like a very strong weapon for whoever the quarterback is coming in, that could be a good move in my eyes. But I don't know. It just seems like right now the Lions are going to take a quarterback. If they can't get one, in the free agency, I think they're prioritizing the draft, getting a quarterback in the draft more than they are in free agency. But I also, like I said before, it's an option to have a patchwork quarterback for a few years before you can figure out that quarterback situation. Because as we know, there are other holes on this team. There's the defensive holes. The Lions really need a pass rusher. They need a defensive lineman that can really wreak havoc. And they really haven't had a guy like that since Sue. And I know Ziggy Ansah had it a couple years, but really Sue was just that dominant force that really set the tone for that defensive line. They need somebody like a Sue in this draft, or just really for the future. And we don't know what the free agency is going to be like. I wonder, though, with free agency, who's going to want to come to Detroit? If they see, man, I want to play for Dan Campbell, Anthony Lynn as offensive coordinator, it's like they're in heaven, basically. Some guys might think like that. I'm really intrigued to see who wants to come here because, as we know from the past, most of the free agents that have come here have been expatriates. We saw Jamie Collins, expatriate. Danny Amendola, expatriate. Danny Shelton, same thing. These guys were all guys that fit Patricia's system because all he knew was the Patriot way. Speaking of Matt Patricia, I don't know if anybody saw, but he is going back to New England. I had a feeling he was going back to New England because we saw McDaniels go back to New England after he got fired from Denver. We've seen other coaches go back. So I'm sure there's some sort of role over there that fits him. Let's face it, he just probably deserves to be in New England for the rest of his career. He's just a Patriot guy through and through. And, he just doesn't really deserve to be a head coach or assistant anywhere else. He's just one of those guys, as Mike Valenti would say, a Belichick wannabe. And just stick there. Bob Quinn, I would love to see where he goes. I would love to see if he goes back to the Patriots or if he just takes some time away from football. I don't know. We'll have to see. But they will never become head coaches or general managers again. That's for sure, because they proved to everybody that it just can't work here in Detroit. To have Patriots and establish a Patriot way outside of New England, it's just very, very hard to do. So Zach Wilson seems to be the quarterback that is most intriguing to me outside of Trevor Lawrence, just to at least look at, because Trey Lance, too many question marks. We'll get into more of a discussion with him on a later episode, but I mean, just 1 year starting at an FCS school. I know he threw 0 interceptions, which is very, very impressive. I don't care what level that is at. That's very impressive. But, he's another one of those guys that was not recruited to play quarterback in college, really. I mean, he had offers from Minnesota to play defensive back and a couple other schools to play linebacker, I think. So, I mean, it could be one of those guys where they just never saw the talent in him that he had. I mean, he could have been starting at a way bigger school if somebody would have given him a chance. I mean, you never know. He could be one of those guys, but a lot of people are intrigued by him. A lot of people. I just think there's a lot of question marks. And it's the same with Justin Fields. I mean, Justin Fields can extend plays, I know. And, there's a whole thing with Ohio State quarterbacks. They don't make it in the NFL. It's just very, very interesting to see how this will play out, because I don't know, there's a lot of question marks about Justin Fields that I'm just not as confident in him. I'll have to do a little more study on him, but I know a little bit more about Zach Wilson because I've been doing a little more film study on him than the other guys, but we'll have to see. I'm really excited to see what this process will be like for the Lions moving forward. Hey, if they want to go with a quarterback in the draft, or if they want to go, get a free agent. Maybe something will arise in the Stafford trade, because it will be a trade. So the Lions, they may be getting some big picks here. I mean, the first-round pick, maybe a second. I mean, they're adding draft capital to Bob Quinn ruined this draft. I mean, from previous years, we'll have, I think, 5 or 6 picks in the draft. So definitely have to stock up on some picks, because they're going to need it. The Lions are going to need some talent from this draft, because some of these pieces are going to be cornerstone pieces for this franchise if they want to attempt at anything at trying to win the Super Bowl, which is the ultimate goal, trying to deliver a championship for the city of Detroit. But that'll do it for this week. Tried getting a guest this week. I reached out to a couple people, and I never got a response. So hopefully in the coming weeks, I want to get a couple guys who coached or played with Dan Campbell. Also, a couple people that are related to Matthew Stafford in some way, maybe coached him, played with him, trying to get some of those guys on as well. Just talking about Matthew Stafford's situation. Also, just want to get more of a take on Dan Campbell as well. So I'm currently working on some of those guests. But stay tuned for future episodes, and check out all the other episodes, the Great Content Fan Report, Wrestling Podcast, Doc and Jock, Michigan Podcast. They're all really, really good to listen to. But thanks again, folks, for tuning in to Open Mic Night.